But today, this week and next week, I've got two very good friends who are preaching. We're in this little series called The Stuff of Life. This week we're looking at, the last couple of weeks we looked at kind of the ordinary of life and then the labour of life. This week we're looking at the rest of life. And then next week with my friend Cara Martin, we are looking at the leisure of life. So Joe Wilton is a colleague of mine. We work together at the Different Co, which is the other organisation that we're a part of in the other half of our week. But she's also a good friend, and we've had some great adventures together, and it's been such a privilege to have, I guess, develop a friendship with Joe over these years. Joe's going to speak on rest. And I really felt that I should just sit in the crowd on this one because honestly I don't feel I have a great deal of integrity to preach on rest or leisure. So I thought I better import some people that are probably more able to speak on it than I. So would you welcome up my good friend Joe Wilton?
Before I head into my message, I just want us to pause for a moment. I don't usually prescribe or even suggest participatory exercises when I'm preaching, but I really felt to start this way today. So if you feel comfortable, can I encourage you to join your wrists in front of you and place them on your chest. This is the ASL sign for rest. Now take 3 deep, slow breaths. Do you feel relaxed? You can relax now. Thanks for joining me in doing that. I thought it would be a restful way to start this message about the rest of life in your Fantastic Stuff of Life series. And as I say, it is wonderful to. I'm very thankful for Scott and Jodie's friendship. It has just been wonderful. I think it's been like 5 years that we've known each other, and he's, as you know. Scott's an incredible person, and it's a privilege to be a colleague of his as well. I remember when I was back in primary school, we'd be given our blank exercise books to write our work in. I'm a bit of a stationery lover, so a blank book to write in was like, oh, I loved it. At our school teachers asked us to rule a margin down the left-hand side of each page. And I remember measuring 2 centimetres with my ruler at the top of the page and your ruler at the bottom, and then, ruling that line down. And the margin was to be left blank. I don't know if you had that at your school as well. And the margin was for teachers' comments and hopefully lots of ticks and hopefully some smiley stickers for my work. But one thing was for sure, you had to start writing after the margin. And I see rest as a similar concept. If the writing on the page represented all of your various activities, your family time, your work time, your leisure activities, then the margin would represent the rest, some blank space in your day and week. When we were at school, we didn't just draw a margin on every 4th page and on the other pages, let the writing take up the whole of the page. And I really feel the Lord impressing on us not to let our work and other activities take up the whole page. And while ruling a margin on the pages of our days and weeks might seem simple, it's not always easy. God created us to rest, and He encourages us to rest. Of course, God leads by example with, what we see in the post-creation rest that He took, as we read in Genesis. And there are also many references to rest and stillness in the Psalms. Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 4:8, in peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, will keep me safe. Of course, Psalm 23, He lets me rest in grassy meadows. He leads me to restful waters. He keeps me alive. He guides me in proper paths for the sake of His good name. And I love the paraphrase in verse 3 of the Message. True to your word, you let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction. And of course, we can also look to the earthly life of Jesus for his guidance. Sometimes I think it can be easy to forget that Jesus came as fully God, he was also fully human and needed rest just like we do. And during his earthly ministry, there was plenty going on. Jesus knew that his time was limited. He had a spiritual mandate that would forever change the course of human history. But he knew the importance of setting a margin and getting some rest. There are many examples in the Gospels of Jesus heading off by himself to rest, and he encouraged his disciples to do the same. The late, great Dallas Willard was asked if he could describe Jesus in one word, what would it be? And the word he used was relaxed. I'm really trying to relax more, but I'm remembering that he said that. And one of my favourite descriptions of Jesus being relaxed is at the end of Mark chapter 4, when Jesus and the disciples are on the lake in a boat. A huge storm whips up, and Jesus stays asleep at the back of the boat with his head resting on a pillow. And I don't know if there's more of a description of a restful posture than that. And of course, the disciples wake him up and they're like, "Don't you even care if we drown?" And then so Jesus gets up and he speaks to the wind and he speaks to the waves, and they settle back down. But Jesus also issues a specific invitation for us to rest in him. In Matthew 11:28, of course, many of you would know these words of Jesus. Come to me, he says, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. And of course, you may be familiar with the Message paraphrase of this verse where Eugene Peterson described it as, come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life, and I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. And you might be here this morning and need to hear this. I feel like the Lord he's giving you permission and an invitation to rest in his presence. And rest isn't always a place. Think of, tropical island, but it's always a person. And of course, that person is Jesus. In fact, if we truly learn the unforced rhythms of grace, we can get really good at resting in the presence of Jesus, whatever our circumstance, wherever we are, even when there's storms about in our lives. And of course, there may be some challenges that you face around rest, like chronic illness or caring responsibilities for children or elderly parents or other family members. So the way that you rest will depend on your specific circumstance. And I think this is really important, rather than comparing ourselves to the way that others rest. The main points that I want to communicate are that God created us to rest as part of our humanity, and that he is with us in our rest. He wants us to rest. It pleases him because it means that we can be more about being and less about doing. I'm going to be suggesting that there are 3 different types of rest, and this list isn't exhaustive. Feel free to add your own, but I thought it was a good place to start. So the first type of rest I think about is what I would call a reset rest. This is the annual leave kind of rest, or long service leave, or maybe a retreat. This type of rest isn't a margin that you rule for 2 centimetres on the left-hand side of your page. This is the one where you rule that diagonal line through the page. I actually do that look, I still have a paper diary, I know, but it's all right. I have both, but I just love to rule that line across the page. And this is the unplugged type of rest. And for you, that might be camping by a river somewhere, or spending a couple of weeks on a staycation at home with your family. For our family, we've spent the last 25 years heading down the coast with most of the rest of the St. George and Sutherland Shire. And there's not much phone coverage, which is great. We do jigsaw puzzles, we take walks along the beach, read books. This year, my husband and I took some long service leave and spent an extended time overseas, and it was a real reset, rest. For the past 8 years, I've taken myself on a 3-day silent retreat each November to hear more clearly from the Lord, reflect on the year that's been, and reset for the year ahead. I just made a silent retreat just a couple of weeks ago. And one question that I like to ask myself is, what restful practice can I bring back from a time of annual leave or a retreat and include it in my everyday? And that might be something that you can reflect on this morning as well. The second type of rest is what I call responsible rest. So God created us to rest. Whether we like it or not, our body needs a certain number of hours sleep each night or each day if you're a shift worker. And we all know, unfortunately, that sleep banking just doesn't work. Think of it as a pre-drawn margin in your book of life. Of course, for some people, again, depending on age and stage of life, sleep can be difficult to come by. If you have very young children or you experience insomnia, my heart really does go out to you because it's a challenging situation. But for those of us who are able to some extent to choose the hours that we sleep, I think there's a responsible rest time for us. I'm a bit of a night owl, so the world makes a whole lot more sense for me at 10 p.m. at night than it does at 6 a.m. However, if I need to get up for work, if I need to drive a car, if I need to be operating machinery the next day, then sleep is a responsibility that I need to take seriously. Psalm 127 verse 2 says, "It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat. For God gives rest," or in some translations it says sleep, "to his loved ones." Last weekend, Brendan and I were visiting our daughter in Temora, just north of Wagga, where she's a high school teacher. And right now it's harvest time out there. Basically, that means round-the-clock work for many on farms across the Riverina and beyond. Even school attendance drops off because the kids can be helping out their families and also earning some pretty good pocket money the last few weeks of term. One thing that I noticed when we were driving out there last weekend were there were quite a few temporary electronic signs that you see on the side of the road with road safety messages flashing. Remember to take a break during harvest. Don't trust your tired self. It was a good reminder that even in the middle of incredibly busy times of work, it's important and responsible to get enough rest. And we know that God is all about this type of rest because loving our neighbour includes us being well rested enough to be able to safely move about in our community. Something to think about. My third type of rest is what I would call regular rest. I love this, just the everyday rhythm of consistent rest in our lives. And while a Sabbath type of rest is wonderful and needed, I try to have a Sabbath rest once a week, it's not the only form of regular rest in God. He's present in every area of our lives. So it's not just the times that we might mistakenly think of as holier than others when he's present in our rest. He's always present, and he created us for ordinary rest during our day. I have to admit, the word stop, as it relates to rest, can seem a little bit like harsh and undoable in the midst of a busy work day or a school term, a uni semester, or in the middle of raising little humans, or even in the midst of volunteer activities or family commitments during retirement. I wonder if the word pause might be a little more helpful for the briefer times of rest that we can build into the rhythm of our everyday lives. We see it in music, the rest note. The music will continue after the pause. We see it in the Psalms. The song or the psalm to God will continue after that beautiful word, Selah. It's kind of staying on the page, but heading over to the margin to take a breather. Galatians 5:25 says, "Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit." And just by being with God and resting in his presence will reveal the rhythm of the Holy Spirit to us. And we can ask the Lord, Lord, how can I rest better? He knows us. He knows how we're wired, right? Show me your ideas, Lord, about new ways that I could rest or take a pause in my day. I love the picture that the Apostle John paints, most likely of himself, in John 13:23, reclining and resting his head on the chest of Jesus. I have a childhood memory of being out for an evening with my parents and being carried by my dad on his hip, and I was resting my head on his chest, and I can distinctly remember hearing his heartbeat and actually the vibration of his voice as he was talking to his friends. And I thought, I wonder if we take time to rest in God more often, or even take a pause, that we'd be more attuned to his heartbeat for ourselves and for those around us. If we go back to the metaphor of the margin we've ruled on our page, which represents rest, do we sometimes waste our margin on things that aren't actually helpful? And so I just want to very briefly touch on what are some barriers that we might be able to overcome to rest. Are there distractions, things that consume us, or even addictions that get in the way of true rest? Maybe there are things that you label rest, but which are actually the opposite. News is the thing for me. I haven't watched a news program on TV for like 15 years, but I devour news online, especially about humanitarian issues because I have a human rights background. But given that that is hardly ever good news, if I consider that rest, then I'm having myself on. So what are your barriers or distractions to rest? Are there things that you're convinced are restful, but if you're really honest with yourself, they're probably not? Maybe it's something you watch online that isn't healthy or even not appropriate. Maybe it's continually scrolling on socials and pretending it's rest, but in reality, it's just making you more anxious that you don't have the perfect life that looks like the perfect life on Insta or TikTok. Maybe it's that you think that you always need to have a drink in your hand to truly relax. Maybe it's you think that you always need to have the house or the yard perfectly tidy before you can take a break. Maybe you just can't close the work laptop or leave the work site on time, or say no to another customer. If you're not sure if something's bordering on being all-consuming or even an addiction, try not doing it for a couple of days and then you'll get an inkling. As I said, I find it very hard not to look at the news online, so I need to put boundaries around that when I'm resting. And how do you best like to rest? There's not much point in me standing up here and giving you an exhaustive list of how I like to rest, because they might not seem like restful practices to you, especially if you don't like watching cricket. I'm so excited about tonight. Anyway, if you're a cricket fan, you'll know. But I am going to make a couple of suggestions about how we can increase the quality of our rest. First of all, though, can I encourage you to customise your margins? Rest isn't one size fits all. Do you need more margin? Like if you're on Microsoft Word and you get the ability to actually customise your margins, you can fit more on the page. I'm suggesting you try and fit less on the page. Do you need to customise your margin at the top and give yourself a bit more space in the morning? Do you need to customise your time in the evening so you get more rest time? Do you need to make that left margin bigger? And of course, this depends again on your context, your work situation, your family, and your health. But thinking about quality rest, maybe you've heard of the term sleep hygiene. It's a well-being practice that helps us to prepare for sleep. Things like going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, as well as putting our devices away for 30 minutes before bed and, say, reading a book instead. I'm sometimes not very good at that, but that's what genuinely, it helps. For me personally, every night I have a herbal tea about an hour before bed and, confession time, a piece of chocolate. But when I go to bed, I use a relaxing pillow mist, a hand cream and a lip balm that I keep on my bedside table, and that's my rhythm of creating an atmosphere for sleep. Something different might work for you, but that's what seems to work for me. And as I've been preparing this message over the past week or so, I've been reflecting that there are also rest hygiene practices that can help us even in our waking hours when we need to pause or stop, or even do our work in a more restful state. Things like, what's your posture when you're resting? I mean, if I'm having a stressful day, I'm kind of resting and I'm wringing my hands and my fingers and I'm like, oh, I'm actually causing pain for myself. So I make myself actually like cup my hands, and it reminds me, it's a brain connection to remind me that I need to be actively and intentionally resting in this moment. I mean, they're only small things, but they can make a difference. If you're on the road during your workday, or you've got your AirPods in while you're working, is there a particular Spotify playlist that you can put on that's going to relax you a little more if you're having a stressful day? How far are your margins ruled ahead? Are you being intentional about putting rest breaks into your days and weeks? And what does a true downtime look like for you, whether that's in your weekday lunch break, where you might be able to go for a quick walk, or what does it look like on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon? Let's try and all be people who do things that create an atmosphere of rest, not apart from God, but in Him. A friend of mine once said that her theme for the year was light the damn candle. Sometimes just creating an atmosphere of calm and rest can be right under our nose. We look at the candle, we're like, I would feel so much more relaxed if I lit you, but I never do. Light the candle. I know this might sound strange to you, but I even use a different body lotion on a day off, because it reminds me, the fragrance reminds me that this is a rest day. So maybe I'm just a super anxious person and I need to help myself out here. But anyway, rest looks different depending on our circumstances, our context. If you're a student with multiple jobs, people sometimes assume you have a lot of downtime, but often that's not the case. So you need to ask God to help you plan your rest. We need to put our rest in the diary, right? I mean, if you have young children, you know that, sometimes you need to sleep when they sleep. It all just, as I say, depends on context. And it's really important for us to remember that rest is not just for us, like everything else. When we participate in God's kingdom, it's not all about us. It's about loving God well, and it's about loving others. When we rest, we can more effectively participate with God in His kingdom, whether that's through our work, our family, or our community. Resting well helps us work and play well. Not the Mars bar a day for those of you who are over 35 and remember the ad. And of course, rest isn't new. In Jeremiah 6, verse 16, we read, "This is what the Lord says. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls." So as we pause or stop, our rest is an act of worship to God. We're in His rhythm and we're acknowledging our limitations. So can I encourage you to take a look at your calendar or diary, maybe as you're starting to plan for 2024, or even as you head into this time of Advent, of Christmas preparations, and put some extra margin in there for rest, for reset rest, responsible rest, and the wonderful everyday rhythm of regular rest. Amen.